could not be more honored that Mary Foley is with us. But I'd like to begin tonight with a prayer about leadership. The prayer I chose comes from Be as Shining Lamp book. And the chapter is called Catherine McCauley and Everyday Leadership. And this section is called Empowerment. I believe that Catherine empowers each of us every day to lead our many mercy schools. And so we pray. Catherine McCauley believed that strong leaders enable others to lead. She was generative, collaborative, and collegial in her leadership, developing trust and nurturing the gifts of others. As Mary Sullivan notes, the future of the Sisters of Mercy rested in a particular way on the new members whom God sent. Thus, these members had to be welcomed, loved, taught, and given a true sense of belonging and inclusion, and their care could not be left entirely to others. Catherine practiced consultative management and autonomous governance. She sent her strongest sisters to start new foundations, trusting them to lead in the way of mercy. Catherine McCauley empowers others to lead and supports them in every way she could. Catherine, please give us the energy and passion to plan for the future sustainability of all our mercy schools. We ask this in your name. Amen. So Mary is with us. I know she will share her background. Mary doesn't like when you do the whole bio thing, which I understand. So I'm going to turn this over to Mary and let her introduce herself to us.
Well, thank you very much, Susan. I was very flattered when Susan invited me to be part of this enterprise. Thank you all for participating in it. I'm a Mercy girl. I went to grade school, high school, and college in Chicago. In fact, those three schools you see there are almost on the same corner. So my parents bought a house when I was 3 so that their kids could walk to Catholic grade school, high school, and college. And we weren't what you'd call a pro-choice kind of family. You just did what you were told. So, but I was thinking about this earlier today. So, I was in elementary school in the 60s. And back then, certainly nobody was talking about branding or marketing our schools. Everyone knew if you didn't send your kid to Catholic schools, you yourselves were going to hell. So, we didn't have enrollment management systems. But in 4th grade, Sister Catherine Alexandria, every day when we come back after lunch, would read to us from a book to kind of settle us down after coming back in. And one of them was the story of Catherine McCauley. And I was absolutely captivated by it. I must have taken that book out of our school library a dozen times before I graduated. And I thought, Sister Catherine Alexandria, she knew branding. She might not have called it that, but she was certainly laying out a wonderful path for us. So I feel very, very blessed to have had that upbringing. My mother would say the Sisters of Mercy practically raised me. And I am all the better for it. So it's been a real honor to be part of this process. So we titled this Strategic Planning, Your School's Bridge from Mission to Vision. And in Proverbs, we hear vision and mission are so central to the life of God's people that without vision, we perish, and without mission, we lose our way. So I feel like, okay, we've got a biblical directive here for strategic planning. So what we'd like to do tonight is talk about how to do it and how to do it as efficiently as possible. Years ago, I was asked to teach strategic planning at the graduate school at Lewis University. And in our textbook, one of the first things I read was that strategic planning isn't important. Strategic acting is. And I thought that was really interesting because I think sometimes we will spend more time on developing the strategic plan than actually implementing the great ideas we come up with. So our goal tonight is to talk about ways to make sure that doesn't happen, to address strategic planning in an efficient but highly effective manner so that each of your schools can get all the benefits of a strategic plan done well. And those benefits include, this is great. We've got this roadmap for growth. We've got direction for getting us to the next level of excellence, whatever that might be for each of your schools. A good strategic plan can get your many different constituent groups aligned toward common goals. You'll end up with better decision making because you've got this roadmap, and that's really important, particularly when in regard to resources and initiatives. There's a lot of accountability for the implementation built into a good strategic plan, and it makes you better able to kind of adapt and be flexible because you what's that old saying? You plan and God laughs. And it's like we all certainly saw that with the COVID experience. Nobody plans. There's a line in I think it's Monty
Monty Python.
Python. Nobody plans for the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody plans for a worldwide pandemic. It showed up in no strategic plans that I ever saw. But I think having a strategic plan makes you more adaptable. And it isn't just being adaptable to the challenges that might arise unexpectedly, but also opportunities that might present themselves. Your key, a planning process done well will engage a lot of key constituents, drawing them closer to the heart of your school. And it'll also kind of reveal, like, do we have the right people in leadership? Are these the people that are going to take us from mission to vision? It's also a really great tool to have if you are planning any kind of campaign, capital or otherwise. And I'm not Pollyanna about strategic planning. I know sometimes it's like we have to do a strategic plan because we've already decided to do a capital campaign and we need something to justify it. But also just the pure strategic planning process, I've hardly seen any plans that the goals don't end up costing us more money than we probably have sitting around. And it often does lead to new funding initiatives. And sometimes we just have to do it because we have to do it. Maybe, because someone said so. The board said we need a strategic plan, or our accreditation process requires a strategic plan. So lots of benefits from strategic planning. And I put together this checklist, and I'll kind of go through these different steps with you. I want to right now just mention two things. Step 7 there, goals, objectives, action plans. That's the terminology that I'm using. Goal being what you want to achieve, objectives being the methods by which you will achieve them, and then the action plans being the nitty-gritty of implementing each of the objectives. However, one man's objectives is another man's goal or aim. And so I'm not in any way saying, oh, this is the nomenclature that you have to get on board with. All you have to do is choose how you want to structure it, what you want to call it, but define it and then be consistent with it throughout the plan and in your communication. I also want to put out that there are 8 steps to creating the strategic plan, but the most important of these 10 steps is the implementation, the strategic acting that I mentioned earlier. Now, before we launch into those steps, I would like to do a little myth busting on all the bad press we get when we talk about strategic planning. If you're one of those people where it's like, I hear those words and my brain practically explodes, or I'd rather stick needles in my eyes, it's because sometimes it has a bad rep. Some of the things you'll hear, oh, it's going to be really expensive. It's going to take forever. We must involve hundreds and hundreds of people. It's something that's just going to sit on a shelf. We'll run out of gas after year 1. We have to have a consultant. It's got to be this big giant report. All of those are myths. And um, in fact, let me address that last about it has to be this giant report, because I feel a little sensitive about this idea. When I started my first job, I had just graduated from college. I got a job as the director of development at a girls' Catholic high school. Development was a very new thing back in 1982. Um, but that school had just finished a strategic plan. I was given a 150-page report, found out there were 53 tactics I was responsible for in my new job, and 37 of them were already late. So I didn't fall in love with strategic planning at that moment in time. But recently I reconnected with an old friend who is the president of the Boy Scouts of America Transatlantic Council. So this is all the Boy Scouts that live outside of the United States throughout the rest of the world. And they did a strategic planning process, and this is their strategic plan. It is the size of a business card. Yet somehow, in this very, very tiny space, were able to state their vision, their impact, the reach, and then here are our aims. There are 5 of them, and they're each described in 1 sentence. So, big, giant, scary report, not necessary. I don't know that I could get you to the business card approach, but we can certainly make it both efficient and let's just say not overly voluminous. So the first piece to this, like everything, it always starts with leadership. And in a perfect world, you might have a previous strategic plan that you have been regularly monitoring, reporting on, communicating about, evaluating, adjusting. And, when it's got 3 to 6 months before it's over, you line up your next piece, your next plan. I don't know about all of you, but I have on occasion worked with schools who did not live in a perfect world. And, the last time they did a strategic plan was 30 years ago. Or we did a strategic plan and it was great, but then we had a lot of staff turnover, leadership turnover, so nothing was ever implemented. Or we have a strategic plan that one person wrote without any input from anybody. And that person is gone now. So, but it starts with leadership, and it starts with appointing a few key leaders to kind of be the shepherds of the process. Most typically, it's the head of school, the president, the principal, whichever terms you use, and either the board chair or someone's that they would designate, that there might be reasons why. One thing that you often will see is, let's say you have a board chair where this is their last year. And of course, because you've been doing highly effective succession planning on the board, you know exactly who's going to be stepping up for next year. That person might be the ideal board rep to be a key leader on this so that they're, in on the ground floor from the very beginning, since it will be their responsibility as board chair next year to be overseeing implementation and things of that nature. These people that are chosen to be the key leaders, they are chosen because they have a great deal of knowledge. They have a great deal of know-how. They have looked at all of the data. They know where the school is right now and what needs to be addressed. Believe them, trust them. Do not make them demonstrate and prove everything that's ever going to come out of their mouths. If they say, we've looked at the test scores and the last accreditation and this and that, and we know that we need to make a priority out of some area of technology that we've never.
Oh, I don't know who. It must be Mary, because Alex, I can see you. Howie, I can see you. Mary, I'm not sure if you can hear us, but
You have.
Oh, there
I'm
you
sorry.
are. You're back. You were frozen for a second.
Oh, I wonder why.
I don't
Uh,
know.
Because I'm on Mercy Wi-Fi, it is
Yes.
quite fabulous. I should have mentioned this at the beginning. Look at, I am in the mother house at Marion Station, Pennsylvania. I've been staying here for the last few days because we're doing a strategic plan at Waldron Mercy. Susan and I were in a meeting about that last night. And so the good sisters are letting me stay here. It's very, very cool. Okay, so, oh, and by the way, especially since it doesn't seem like we're a gigantic group, please, if you have any questions along the way, just unmute and start speaking. This is much more interesting if we have an exchange than if I just go on and on. Okay, another key aspect of leadership is your strategic planning committee. You want it to be representative of your different constituents. You want people with the kind of skills that you know will be helpful. And that's where the key leaders can, it's like, okay, we know there's going to be a big piece about X and Y and Z. Who do we think has the most knowledge about X, Y, and Z? There are also some kind of personality issues that you need to address. Um, are these people who will work well together, who can work as a team, that they can, play well with others, be polite and respectful, believe and trust the key leaders, and also that they understand the limits of their role. That they don't think, oh, I'm on the strategic planning committee, and now the school will now do what I tell them to do. That is not how this works. You're here to provide input, but at the end of the day, everything is going to go through the board. And the board will approve the goals, then the board will approve the objectives. We recently with another school, there was an example where the goals had been sent to the board, and then they made a few changes, and then they were approved. And then when we went on to the next step, it was like, well, we want to tweak this. I was like, oh, no, that stage is done. The ship has sailed. We are moving on to objectives. And so, their ability to focus and not bring their own agendas to the process. The third element of leadership, or I guess fourth, is the staff liaisons. At the end of the day, 90% of the work of a strategic plan is going to end up being, if not conducted by, certainly managed by a member of the staff. So you want to involve them early on in the process to have a hand in there will certainly be some staff who are on the strategic planning committee. There will also be members of the staff involved with creating the objectives. So those people are going to, get involved and kind of be the ones who see this through from, from mission to vision. And they are absolutely essential to the process. Uh, do you need a consultant or a facilitator? Let me say, as a consultant and facilitator, the answer to that is not necessarily. Sometimes it's very helpful. I certainly hope I am when I do it. But there are lots of other times when there might be someone else. Maybe you're bringing on a new board member who has strategic planning background. That might be someone who could do a great job facilitating for you. And then they'll be very invested after they've facilitated the plan in making sure it all comes to fruition. Maybe there's someone in your school community, someone on the you start talking about this and someone on the faculty says, this is what my husband does for a living. It's like, oh, maybe he'd like to come in and do it for free. Just earlier today, in the earlier session, one of the participants said, this is my second time running a strategic planning process for our school and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hey, everybody, you looking for a facilitator? Hire her. She's got experience. She knows the Mercy core values, the charism, so you've already leapfrogged there. Sometimes it is helpful to have someone from the outside if you need to have some challenging conversations. If you have, someone on the committee or at a meeting who maybe is not as aligned with the mercy value inspired behavior of a member, to have that, have someone who can say, listen, I really need you to quit. I know you love the idea that you're a devil's advocate, but you're just coming across as a jerk and you're slowing the process down. I would probably not use the word jerk, but, just to be clear with all of you. Um, and so there's, every school is going to be different, whether or not you need someone, and is that someone from outside of the school, and is that someone that you have to engage professionally? Alrighty, so that's leadership. That's number one on our checklist. The next is planning the plan. And this really starts with a conversation with the key leaders. Okay, what are we trying to accomplish here? The tangible is we need to come up with a plan. But what else are we doing? If this is a school where maybe there's new leadership, new president, new principal, new head, whatever. They might say, I really want to use the process of getting input from people as a way to also get to know them, to build relationships with them. So that might affect how, do we want to just do a survey to get input from our constituents, or maybe we want to do a series of focus groups where this person can come in and say a few words at the beginning and, greet people coming in and going out, things like that. So this list of questions here is very, very helpful with planning the plan, getting to a process that makes sense for your school, because every school is different. Every school, you've got different levels of maturity of leadership. You've got different issues. You're in different, geographic communities. You have different kind of competitor schools. So the more this is tailored exactly to you, the better off it's going to be. If you are ever in a position where you're looking at consultants and thinking of paying them money, and they say, this is how we do it, and this is the only way we do it, it's our way or the highway, I would say keep looking, because you're always better off if it's tailored to you. The question here about, is the plan structure mandated? Sometimes the accreditation process will not only require a strategic plan, but it will want it to be aligned with the accreditation categories. So if that's the case, it's like, okay, that's a non-negotiable, then that's what we're going to do. There are a million other ways to do it. The Mercy Core Values, the National Standards and Benchmarks for Excellent Catholic Schools. If that's if you're using those benchmarks at your school within the 4 domains that they have, then it would make a lot of sense to structure your plan that way. But there are no strategic planning police. There are no strategic planning laws. You get to decide this. What makes the most sense for you? There's no wrong way to doing this. The givens and the non-negotiables, some of that you will spring right from your bylaws. It's like you don't have the power to, I don't know, sell the land that your school is sitting on, or change the mission and decide, you know what? For 100 years, we've been an elementary school, and now we are just going to be a very small vocational school for, ex-cons. You don't get to change the mission. And speaking of mission, that is frequently where schools start in a strategic planning process. But this is where you guys have a huge edge by being part of the Mercy Education Network, because you periodically go through the Mercy Mission Accountability process, where you look at charism and you look at Catholic identity and you say, do we need a new mission statement, and why and for whom and what's the process? Unless something has majorly changed since between your Mercy Mission Accountability study and the start of your strategic plan, you can check that box right off the list and move on. However, I would encourage you to look at your mission statement and see if you have any of the verboten words. And the verboten words are these things like we strive to, we attempt to. It makes me crazy. The Mercies have been doing an incomparable job, unparalleled academic excellence and faith formation forever. You're not striving to do it, you're there. This is what you are called to do. This is your mission. You're delivering on your mission. And now your vision is going to take you to that next place. So just try to get any of the conditional language out of that if you can. Okay, so you've got two kind of sets of input to the strategic plan. One is the stuff that's already out there. Your last accreditation report, any Mercy education feedback that is provided to you. You've got your test scores. You've got your parent satisfaction surveys and the 8 million other surveys that you do every year. You also have ideally administrators who are really good at their jobs and they know a lot. They have looked at all of this. So they can, here, one of two things can happen. You can say to your strategic planning committee, we're going to send you 500 pages of data and we would like you to review all of it. Or you can say, we have reviewed all of this because that's our job. And here's what we're going to tell you, and we're going to share it with you in the first strategic planning meeting. So that's one set of the inputs that you have. The other is more of the gathering information regarding your current constituents and the current, like the issues of the day. So, for example, in one of our strategic planning meetings, I was told that the kids who are coming into the early childhood center are not coming in with the skills they had 10 years ago. And I was very surprised by this because I thought, how many skills do you need when you're 3? And so I started asking experts in the field about this. And it turns out this is a big thing. This is a problem. And fortunately, there's research out there, there's data out there, there's information, and there are insights into what you can do. So that's one piece that you can look at. Another is, what do our current people think? And as I mentioned earlier, you can get that through a survey. You can get that through doing focus groups. And when you are thinking about those different ways to get information from your constituent groups, I would really encourage you to only do it if you really mean it. Like there are some places where, it's like, okay, we've done these focus groups and they're great, and here's all the information. And, it's like, yeah, we don't care. This is what we're doing. Like, so if you're going to ask them, listen to them. The project that Susan and I are working on, I think for the first 1, 2, 3, 4 meetings, like we were hauling around pages and pages of flip charts where, we had conducted a SWOT analysis first with faculty and staff, then with the board. Then we shared the faculty and staff input with the board and said, okay, now let's bring these two sets of ideas together. Then we shared that with the strategic planning committee. Then we, and that's how we set the first draft of the goals. If you are inclined to do the focus groups, and the two things, one is, if enrollment is going to be a key issue, you will know that ahead. That's not going to be a surprise finding of a strategic plan. You either know if you've got enrollment issues or not. When you do focus groups with current parents, if you're going to be asking some questions about enrollment, do not have the legacy parents in that group, or do 2 separate groups with them. I was asked to do an enrollment specific series of focus groups for one school. And they did not segment legacy versus non. So, I say, so, when did you start thinking about your high school selection decision? And it was like, oh, that was a foregone conclusion. Oh, when I was, in my mother's womb, that die was cast. I went to Mother Macaulay, a girls' Catholic high school. Rah, rah, rah. My first job was at a girls' Catholic high school. My second job was at a girls' Catholic high school. When my husband and I bought our house, I was like, this is great because you can walk to the girls' Catholic high school. To which he said, do we have children that I don't know about that this would be a concern? What's going to happen 14 plus years from now? It's like, I like to have a plan. Um, so, I also wanted to mention, there are a lot of different systems for gathering input from people. The SWOT analysis, which stands for strengths and weaknesses, which are internal to the school, meaning you have, some control over them. And then opportunities and threats, which are external, is probably the most common. But over the course of time, lots of other different things have come up with, and they all have cool acronyms. There's SOAR, there's PESTLE, there's TOES, NOISE, SCORE, VRIO. So there's a whole alphabet soup of possibilities. Take a look at them. And again, here's something that is personal to your school. What would make the most sense? For example, one school was thinking about a SWOT analysis, and then they heard about SOAR, and they felt like that was more kind of positive than talking about weaknesses and threats. And because of some morale issues that were going on, they thought that would be a better way to go. That's the kind of tangible versus or intangible elements when you're planning the plan. Like, we want to really use this as a way to say rah rah, to share our successes. To get people talking about us. Word of mouth is the most effective form of, marketing for our schools. So we want to use this process to get people talking about us but we want to control the narrative. We here at Christian Brothers Services have found that including prospective parents and students in strategic planning interviews, focus groups, surveys, etc., can be very helpful, particularly if enrollment is a priority for you. Obviously, if you're in elementary school, it's a little hard to do your prospective student focus groups because there are only two. But certainly at the high school level, you could be talking to fifth and sixth graders, seventh and eighth graders, etc. There may be experts in your midst, and there might be experts in your community, or, hey, we know that this is an issue, and, I had this professor in grad school, and he was very interested in this topic, and I'm just going to call him up and ask for him to, it might be provide us with resources. It could be come in and talk to the strategic planning committee for half an hour on this topic. So lots of different places that you can get your inputs and different ways of doing it, and no one way is the right way, and it's all what makes sense at this moment in time for your school. But I would mention two things. One is not all inputs are created equal. The person who is the loudest is not necessarily the most right. And in fact, I was just having a conversation with a client today who said, there's this one faculty member who was complaining, oh, we need more free time and we need more this and that. And, it's like, yeah, she has the easiest job of anyone in the whole school. It's like, isn't it funny how sometimes that happens? And then just, using common sense. Someone might say, hey, I know this really cool process, and, it'll do this and this and this. And it is a really cool process, but it's going to take 17 months. Weigh that in your evaluation. Earlier, right at the get-go, we talked about vision, and this is often a part of a strategic plan. We'll say, here's our vision, and the plan is what's going to get us to our vision. It can be a really fun exercise to get people involved in talking about that. Sometimes it's a frustrating exercise because, it's only like 3 sentences long. And what is that I think Abraham Lincoln said, I have made this letter long because I don't have time to make it short, to get something concise that reflects, there have been schools where it's like, we worked and worked and worked on vision. And then they're like, "Ah, we're exhausted. Let's just skip that piece." Again, it's entirely up to you. It can be useful or not. It can take a long time or not. What it basically is, what's the next level of excellence for your school? One of the great things about having a strategic plan is that whether you have a stated vision statement or not, it shows people where you're going. And that's important to everyone. When you're recruiting faculty and staff, when you're talking to donors, when you're talking to prospective parents, it can be a really useful tool. Okay, so you've done all these steps. Well done, congratulations. Now, with all of this insight, we need to come up with what is to be accomplished, goals. And that is sort of the work of the strategic planning committee. Okay, we've seen, we've listened, we've heard, we've got the million flip charts if that's the way you do it. So what are the priorities going to be? And how do we want to rank them? So what typically happens is that the committee will do a draft. Sometimes I have found this, to be really expeditious. Someone who is good at synthesizing a lot of information will say, I'll do a first draft, and then we'll, send it out to everybody, and then then we'll have a meeting to argue back and forth. Is this a goal or is this a method by which we can achieve the goal, also known as an objective? There's then the fine tuning of the goals. And if you are interested in a lot of input from different folks, a step you can take is what we call a goal consultation study or survey. And it's really simple. You can send it out to specific segments of your audience, or you can send it to everyone in your database for whom you have an email address. And it basically lists the proposed goals, and they say, yes, I accept, or no, I do not accept. If you want, you can give them an option to provide comments. If you give them that option, they will take advantage of it. At Waldron Mercy Academy, they did the goal consultation process. We had 25 pages of comments. But our strategic planning committee, they went through, they read them all. Some were clearly things that, the head of school needed to follow up on. Some were things where people were, clearly just had a misunderstanding. So, sometimes the things that bubble up in a plan are really interesting because, it's like, oh, we really need to do X. Oh, well, we're already doing X. In fact, we've been doing X for the last 7.5 years. But what that tells us is we are not communicating X effectively at all. So it may not need to be a goal for the strategic plan, but we certainly need to talk to the people in the communications department about how we're sharing this information. So then you've got your goals, or you think you have your goals, but your goals have to be approved by the board. So then they go to the board, and the board either edits them or affirms them. In some cases, it's like, yes, 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 thank you for your service. In other cases, they'll say, well, this isn't how I understand a goal to be. And then there has to be sort of a recap of this is our process and these are our definitions. And, but then the board approves, and okay, now we're locked. The goals are done. Check that off the box. We're moving on to the objectives, the methods by which the goal can be achieved. We think it's really important that here is an opportunity to bring in more than just your strategic planning people, committee. So you've got your committee members, they're going to be part of this process. You invite your board members in if they A, have relevant expertise, or B, if we just want to be polite. And then, you look at, okay, so for these goals, we've got these people. And it's like, do we think that's enough for this exercise with these people? Or are there other, I think we should add this one teacher from here, or I think we should add a former board member who has expertise here. So you put together a team for each goal. And let me just say, if you have more than 10 goals, the likelihood of achieving them over the course of the next 3 years is slim. So, 5 goals, 7, I think 8, you don't want to go goal crazy. So you've got each of your goal groups, and the first thing is just brainstorm. Just brainstorm any thought you have on how we can accomplish this. So you might have a goal that says, we want to renovate the science wing. Okay, well, if we want to renovate the science wing, we need to raise, $350,000. How are we going to do that? So that's the objective. The goal is renovate. The objective is raise $350,000. Well, so how can we do that? Well, we can do it via personal solicitation. We can do it via get foundation funding, do a special event. All of those are possible objectives. We could buy a whole lot of lottery tickets. That could be an objective as well. Just get everything down on paper of what could be. And then once you finish your brainstorming, then you say, okay, we can't do all of these things. So therefore we need to maybe eliminate the lotto, some of the others that are more far-fetched, prioritize, and then decide how we're going to state it. And the goals tend to be sort of big and overarching, and they'll be achieved over the course of the 3 years, where the objectives are very specific. They are, they have deadlines. They have, there might be a dollar goal or something about a number or a percentage. There might be, in addition to knowing that we want to achieve it during year 1, maybe we want to set it up as a quarterly thing. So in quarter 1, we're going to do this, then quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, because that takes out the very, I think, human tendency to procrastinate. Oh, we have the whole year to do it. And then 2 months before the end of the year, there's this burst of activity. And then everyone's cranking. And I think that's one of the reasons that strategic planning sometimes gets a bad rep. When, as you're thinking about, okay, how we're going to express it, the specificity we're going to bring to it, who, what, where, when, you also want to think about the implications. So, for example, one group might say, oh, we want to explore new options for the daily schedule so that the kids can have more time for extracurriculars. It's like, okay, well, that's something. That is certainly something that could be done. But if we're exploring it, how does it end? Okay, we've explored. And 5 years later, we're still on the same schedule and the kids have no access to extracurriculars. It's like, no, we need to explore it and then maybe make a recommendation. And perhaps then the following year is to develop and implement a pilot program. And then at the end of the year, evaluate that and either adjust or eliminate. So if it says, if you're starting with explore, investigate, or research, make sure that a subsequent objective is the actual implementation of it. Mm-hmm. Some of your objectives will be one and done. Let's complete the renovation of the chapel. Okay, it's complete. We check that box, we moved on. Or maybe a goal relates to increased communication with parents. And the objective is we're going to have a quarterly newsletter. Well, you know, okay, we know how to get a quarterly newsletter in place, and then we're going to evaluate it. And if we like it and we think it makes sense, then it just becomes part of, the responsibility of the administration. It's just institutionalized. When you have defined your objectives and you have all this great specificity around them, and you've kind of looked at, okay, what can reasonably be done with the energy that of a normal human being. 47 objectives that all have to be accomplished in the first 6 months, unlikely. So that, then you might be moving things around timing wise. So now you've got it, you've got the objectives, they're in great shape. Now this is where the staff liaisons really start earning their keep. And their job is to do two things. One is to create the action plan, the sort of nitty gritty of how the objective is being accomplished, and then how to evaluate its success. And is that just that it got done and it met the deadline, or there, we wanted 25 more people to attend our special event. Okay, and we did that. Is it a percentage? Or it might be like, we want to do X, Y, and Z as determined by whatever method you're using to determine it by. So all of this, of course, is in the service of making sure that these things get implemented, and we don't just have a beautiful Pulitzer Prize winning plan. So we want to keep thinking about implementation. And I don't know, I saw this picture of Catherine McCauley and I thought, she looks like a woman who's all about implementing. She just got things done. And, if my memory, harkening back to the, mid 60s is accurate, it's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We've decided and we're moving on. So the action plan tells you what has to happen for the moving on. And I realize some of you are watching this on a phone. Some, you probably can't see anything that's on this slide, but you will get the slides emailed to you. But this chart below here is where it shows how you break down each objective into the necessary steps. Although this is another area where people can get very particular about the terminology. Steps, tactics, actions, strategies. That is your choice. Now, when we do this, we start breaking things down. One of the things you might hear is like, okay, I get that this would be in year one, but do we really have to wait? It's like, absolutely not. If we've identified something and we can get it done, fabulous. It can stay in the plan. And then when you do, the first quarterly report on how the plan is going, it's like, look at this, done, done, done. More reasons to celebrate. I think one of the essential pieces of the action plan is that each step is assigned to an individual, not to a committee, not to a department, but to a human being. That person doesn't necessarily have to do everything, but they have to make sure that step gets done. Maybe it's something that you can't do it all at once. Like one of the things here is this plan is about holding cultivation events. So one of the steps is establish the dates and the host for each event. Well, if you're trying to plan 20 events, then you probably need more than one person to accomplish that task in a timely fashion. But so maybe she enlists 2 other people to do this, but she's going to make sure that they're doing their job. It also can provide some sort of gentle pressure, shall we call it? Because if, Mary's assigned to the first step, and then the next one is Steve's responsibility, and the third one is Susan's responsibility, and Mary is not pulling the trigger on what she needs to be doing, Steve can be saying, come on, I can't do what I need to do until you do your thing. And so, it kind of builds that accountability. But the action plan, those are the marching orders. This is when, the pedal meets the metal. There's
Mhm.
some expression and I'm not remembering what it would be. Okay, communication. So you've got this great plan, but you're going to be communicating before you have the plan finished because this is exciting. This is news. This is, this shows that you're not a school just doing the same old, same old. You're looking ahead. You're always looking. You're always growing. You've got momentum. So from the very beginning, this is a year that we create a new strategic plan, and we're so grateful to the people who have agreed to be on the strategic planning committee. Here are their pictures. Here are their names. Here's their background. Oh, look, here are pictures from the faculty staff SWOT analysis, and you've got people up, they're broken into teams and they're, using colored markers and it's very exciting, okay, now we've got this even bigger group of people who are working on the objectives. So it's showing like, oh, look at, there are all these people who are invested in your school and care about its future and want to make it happen. Once the plan is complete, you'll have two things. One is the internal document, and that's really where you have all those action plans. It says the goal, the objective, the steps, how we're going to evaluate this. And that becomes the basis for the reporting going forward. What you communicate publicly, the nice shiny document that will be on your website, the nice shiny document that you print up in small quantities to share with upper level donors and foundations and prospective parents. That's going to focus more on the foundation documents of your school. And this is where you guys are so lucky by being part of Mercy Ed, because that means, you've already got your core values. You all have your portraits of a graduate, which is a great tool to use in the strategic planning process. It's like, this is what we say our portrait of graduate is. Is it? Are they all getting here? And if not, what can we do going forward to make it so? So, there might be testimonials and pictures and maybe a letter from the president or the board chair or the principal or all three of them. It's, it's a sales tool. It is, you want this to be a document that not only says, here are our goals and here are our year one objectives, or maybe you want to share all 3 years objectives. But it's really about telling people you're on the move. You are not sitting on your laurels. As impressive as those laurels are, we are always striving, because we know in education, if you are not moving forward, you are falling behind. There's no just sitting around.
Mhm.
Now we're really ready for implementation. We know what we're going to do. We know who's going to do every step of the way. We know when they're going to get it done. And then we're going to evaluate, adjust, and that is the final step, which is the ongoing oversight and adjustment. So basically, your staff liaisons are going to be reporting each quarter, minimally, on what has happened within their domain. This should be an agenda item for all your board meetings, so that, the board is, kind of the steward of the plan. They need to make sure that this is moving forward. That action plan template that I gave you, that has the goal, objective, strategy, assignment, deadline. The report is, you can just use that same thing and add the status. One option for status is that it is complete. Another is that it is in progress, but on schedule. It is behind schedule. But here's the really good reason why it's behind schedule. Or, we got through the first 4 steps, and you know what? This is not a good plan. This is not going to get us to that next level of excellence. You know what this is doing? It's making everyone angry, and unproductive. It's like, okay, well, now we've learned that. So the status is we are done with this objective and we're going to move on. So it's really important to do good oversight and especially during year one, because if you do it then and you do it right, then it just becomes sort of, again, institutionalized for going forward. I do want to say one thing about, if you do eliminate something, it's like, okay, this is what we learned. Keep that in the documentation, keep that in the reporting so that, 3 years from now, when we're starting the next strategic plan, if someone comes up with this great idea again, you can say, okay, we reviewed the last strategic plan, and one of the things we noted was this. So would it be different this time around? I know there are some people who are always like, well, we used to do it this way. And I'm not suggesting that you be those people, but to say, let's not leave what we learned behind. Um, so don't just erase it, use it as a starting point for your next plan. Now, I will also say that there, oh, wait, whoops. So the adjustment, the plan is not a lock. That's why we only hard copy publish a small number, and they are accurate at the time of publication and sharing. But things are going to change. You're going to adjust. There is no perfect plan. Something happens for good or for ill. It could be the something that happened could be, say, someone just offered us $3 million to do X. We didn't think we could get to that until year 3. But you know what? We thought we'd say yes and take their money and do it now. That might mean some of the things we had planned for year 1 have to move. But, we're not idiots. Someone's offered us $3 million. We're going to strike while the iron is hot. So, rigorous oversight, the monitoring, reporting, adjusting as you need. This is going to lay such a great foundation for the next strategic plan that is going to be an absolute breeze. So I realize that I have been talking about all of these different steps, and perhaps you would like to say a few words or ask some questions or, tell us your best strategic planning jokes. So I'm going to, well, let me first say thank you before we get to that, and then I'm going to stop the screen sharing so I can see you better. Okay, I'm going to wrap up then with just 2 things. Some of you might be familiar with this, the Master Builder Prayer, or sometimes it's called the Prophets of a Future Not Our Own, or Prayer for a Journey. But it's a long prayer, but it's a great prayer to use for your strategic planning meetings. And I just want to mention 2 of the lines that are in it. No set of goals and objectives includes everything. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. The fact that you showed up, the fact that you're even thinking there's value to a strategic plan means you are providing such blessing to your school. Thank you so much for all the things that you do at every level of leadership that we have here.
Awesome. Mary, thank you. I continue to learn from you, and walking us through the steps is just so important because you make it real. And I thank you for that. And I know that Donna said this, but one of the number one things I learned was the importance of really publicizing and sharing your plan with the community, and how it can really invigorate the whole stakeholder group about there's great things happening at that school because they're looking to the future. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy.